am a temple who walks the earth. My womb is fertile for giving birth. I am a woman planted in truth. I grow my branches from sacred roots. You are the form of who you want to be. So come untethered, your soul is free. We're here to heal, we're here to thrive. We are a dream who's come alive. We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination for God's sake. A revelation for God's sake. An evolution for God's sake. An inspiration for God's sake. 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 For God's sake.
And so it is. Hello, Essence. This is Jody England, and you are listening to Wild Soul Medicine Radio. And I am so delighted today to get to share with you one of my favorite wild women soul sisters on the planet, Jena LaFlamme. And if you weren't with us for the Women Come Undone experience, then you are in for a treat, because this woman is really one of the most compelling people I've ever met, and it really takes a lot to impress me. And when I met Jena, I was just enamored by her. I'd never seen a woman so confident in her skin, and I had never seen someone so completely embodied in the physicality and also in the essence of who she is. Like she's just so compelling to watch and to witness, and I learned so much from her just being in her presence. And so every time I have the opportunity to talk with her or share what she's up to with you, I really love that. And so she's here today because she has a new book and she's got some cool stuff happening. And as I prepared to be with her today, I was really getting this call to deepen into essence with her, like the meaty stuff that we all want to know about what her journey has been like and who she is, and what makes her tick and what keeps her up at night, and what edges she's currently working, and just what it feels like to be her. Not so that we can copy her or try to emulate her, but really just so that we can deepen into what one woman's journey into essence has looked like. And I just feel like there's a lot of medicine for us here. So I'm not even going to go with her formal bio, and I'm sure at some point we'll talk about what she has, ways you can play with her and all of that. But to begin, I'd like to just invite us all to drop into a space of listening from the deepest part of who we are, and knowing that you showed up here because there's some wisdom and some medicine here for you. And your brain may not know what that is. My brain doesn't know what it is at this moment, but I trust that it will present itself perfectly. And so we just allow ourselves to open into that space and come here from a place of heart and soul and yumminess. So without further ado, I welcome, hello, Jena.
Hi, Jody. Pleasure to be here. Thank you for that intro. I'm blushing.
You and your voice, like, just if you can just feel the energetic of Jena's voice, like just like her vocal cords ooze pleasure. Like the way that you talk, the way that you move, like every breath you take, every bite of food, like it really is, it's such a practice that you do, isn't it?
It is. it definitely, I've embraced that practice.
Yeah. So I want to hear about that, and I'd love to start back when that wasn't the case. And I don't even know these answers. Like, I'm curious. Like, who were you before you figured this piece out, and what has that journey been like for you?
Before I figured it out, I'd say I was a very self-critical overachiever. And I absolutely had my focus on doing well in the outside world. That meant studying really hard when I was in school and being in orchestra and being in this sport and that sport and working. And I was very much a go, 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 24/7, trying to look good to the world type of person. And inside I was highly critical of myself. I felt like I was never good enough. I certainly criticized my body. I remember I was 12 when I said the words, "I'm fat," and continued on through my teens and 20s into a very painful relationship with food where it became a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way where my dislike for my body caused me to try to control my eating, which then anytime you restrict, you set yourself up for being out of control. And that became a nightmare. And it was years of that, Jody, before I came to understanding what I now know about pleasure.
Yeah, so when you were in that space of, disconnect and being so hard on yourself, were there, what was it like? What did you try to figure that out? Did you go down the whole road of dieting and beating yourself up? Was there any spirituality component of any of that, or was it just from the mind space?
It was definitely just from the mind. I had no concept of spirituality. I had been raised going to church, but I had faded away from that at a certain point. I didn't relate anymore. But I didn't know what else there was. And I guess there was a point. There was a crossover. And when I say there was no spirituality, really, I didn't use that word at first. But what came through as my first saving grace was a relationship with nature. And that happened as a total blessing. I was 18 years old. Wow, it seems so long ago. Such a little young thing. But I was 18 years old, and I had the blessing of bumping into a man who lived in the rainforest. I went to a hippie festival, my first hippie festival, and there he was. He looked like he could have been my dad. And he took me under his wing and invited me to his home in the rainforest. And I was a city girl, had very little interest in nature. It was, I liked a nature walk on the weekend or go to the beach on Saturday, but I didn't share any identity with nature. I thought humans live above nature, and nature is there to serve humans. We're better than nature, I thought. We're better than the earth, us superior thinking beings. So I really didn't have a clue. But through his mentorship, he took me into a realm that's called deep ecology. So not many people know this term, but ecology, we know, is the study of ecosystems and how plants and organisms, animals work together. Deep ecology is more of a philosophy of how all beings on the earth cooperate, how we're all of equal value, how we're all here, how we're all in it together. And I had this awakening where I realized, no, humans are not superior to the earth. We're not above the earth. We're not separate from the earth. We are one with the earth. And in that moment, my striving to get ahead and look perfect and all of these external things, I wouldn't say it disappeared, but it was the first chip off the block where I realized, wow, if a tree is perfect as it is, metaphorical warts and all, it's got holes, it's got bumps, it's totally irregular, but it's stunning, it's beautiful, it's perfect. If the tree can be perfect as it is, I can be at least okay as I am. So I guess that was the beginning of my spiritual opening, though I wouldn't even have used the word spiritual at the time.
Mhm. It feels like a divine intervention, like a spirit guide getting sent down. So thank God for those, right? Where you're like, hey, she's off track. Time for intervention number 1. I love
And
that.
I'd say before that, my strategy had really been deprivation, denial. Okay, starve yourself here. Don't eat. I remember thinking, oh, well, just don't eat and just drink water. Like, what kind of strategy was that for anybody, especially not a growing girl?
Mm-hmm.
And it was totally barbaric. I did not think of my body as having any rights or feelings or any valuable needs at all. My body was an object to be controlled. That was it.
Mhm. Well, I relate to that one. And I feel like that's the case for so many of us, even without weight issues, but just like, even the way the media and the masculine paradigm have really reinforced this idea that we're all wrong. And so we're down to even controlling like the hairs on our face and the freckles on our cheeks and, every little last bit of trying to make the wrongness of ourselves into some kind of, external rightness. It really does come from such a punishing place, it seems like.
It really does. There's a big lack of dignity for the Mother Earth, and then our bodies are that earthly part of us. Obviously, if we're a woman, our bodies are feminine, but I also think for man, their body is the feminine part of them. It's the Mother Earthly part of them. And, across the board, we have no respect for that culturally.
Mhm. So true. So true. And I also feel like, almost like we're in this evolutionary stage where we're just beginning to understand, like, when we were in the stage where we were surviving, we had to be pretty harsh on ourselves or we were dead, so it was like there was little room for going outside of the norm or being soft in any way. And I feel like right now we're beginning to start to traverse these areas where it's like, like what else is there? What else is there if we're not punishing or controlling or shaming, and how do we break all of that old, really DNA patterning around how we've been brought up, particularly as women, but then as humans, for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting to question the why of how we got to this state of disrespecting the earth, disrespecting ourselves. It's a very long philosophical debate, but it seems that at some point it's almost like our minds. Once upon a time, we were animals. We were monkeys. We were apes. Humans are considered one of the great apes in terms of zoology. But along the way, we distinguished ourselves from these other animals, and we came to have this conscious thinking mind. And that's a wonderful thing. We can do so many great things with the mind. But unfortunately, it's almost like a computer that got out of control and got a little too, think a little too much of itself, where the mind can forget where it came from. Our minds developed out of our bodies. Our bodies are the mothers of our mind and the grandmothers. And they really need to respect where they came from. But unfortunately, our culture has taken a very confused turn, and that legacy of respect has been lost.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's one of the things I actually love about your work is this, you call the body your animal. And that's such a new concept for me because I definitely have always related to my body from my mind, right? That the mind is higher, the body is this thing that I have to have in order for my mind to be able to speak, but really the body is lower than me, it's lower than my consciousness, and it's really, every time you speak of it, I feel the truth of it. I love hearing you talk about the earth and the body being, the extension really of the earth, and then all of the ancient wisdom that's in all of that. And it's also very foreign to me. So I'd love to have you say more about where does this awareness of your body as an animal come from?
Jody, it was the life-changing moment for me, moving from struggling with my weight and struggling with food, when my teacher said to me, "Oh, I know why you're struggling with all of this." And I was like, "Why?" I was actually astounded by his confidence that he knew, because at this point I had studied yoga in and out. I'd studied nutrition in and out, and who's this guy that thinks he has the answer? But lo and behold, he said to me, "It's because you're not listening to her." And I said, "Who?" He said, "Your body." He said, "Your body's an animal. There's two of you. There's your mind and there's your body. And she's a she, first of all. Your body's not an it, not an object that you own, but a creature unto herself. She's a living, breathing, feeling, wise, decision-making animal. And the problem is, you haven't been listening to her. The problem is, you haven't been respecting her." And Jody, those words landed like a ton of bricks, and I felt my body's ears prick up and say, "Yes, finally, someone is recognizing me." And it was this hallelujah moment, and I'm noticing it in the Facebook group related with my book that's just come out, other women having the same response where their body is saying, "Finally, I have an ally. Finally, someone is on my side." Because like I was saying, with the mind taking over, I think we've come to treat the body like the weather. So the weather, it's unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. It could hurt us. It could harm us. It can be dangerous. And we think of bodies, especially female bodies, like that, rather than seeing, okay, they've got their own way, and just like the weather, it all works out in the end to keep the planet sustainable, so to do the impulses of our body. So I came to realize I need to respect her. I need to learn about her. And it became a process of getting to know this creature that I live with.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and for those of you who were in the Woman Come Undone experience, Jena actually did a session on me where she helped me connect with my animal, which was so amazing. And I have to confess that since that session, I haven't done a very good job at reconnecting with her. Here and there, little bits, or I'd sit down to do it, or I'd be preparing to eat something, and then I would think, okay, well, let me see what she wants. But it was like, I don't know. I listened. I didn't really hear what she said. Or I think I heard what she said, but I don't really have that around, so I'm just going to eat what I would normally eat, or whatever, So it hasn't been super easy to just jump right on board with like, oh, great, I have an animal, so, let me be friends with her. And so I'm curious, what are your thoughts about why do people have so much shame and impatience and disconnect with their animals?
It comes back to what I was saying before about the mind perceiving itself as better than and body as lesser than. And, of course, you don't pay attention to those that you perceive are lesser than you. It's how we are. It's built into our systems, this sense of status that we want to serve and move towards a high status and move away from a low status. So if you think of your body as this pain in the ass, lump of carbon that I have to carry around, only gets in my way and has needs that are annoying, then that's the reality you're going to experience. The way around that, and what really changed it for me, Jody, and I offer this to you personally and to everybody listening, this realization that without your body, you'd be dead. So she really is the one life you've been given. She's your mother. She's your wife. She's your lover. She's any metaphor you want to use for an important relationship in your life. she is that. I like to say you're never alone because you're always with your animal. And it's that awareness that can help us make it more of a priority. And I'd be curious to ask you, because you're a mother, like when you had a child, did they immediately become paramount in their importance to you, or is that something that developed?
Well, it was both. It was really both. So I thought you were going to say, how did I relate to my pregnancy, or like, did that touch me in with my animal? And my experience of pregnancy was still very disembodied. Like I didn't see the miracle. At that time, I was not doing any kind of spirituality work, and I was a district manager with a huge company and was working a ton, and I was trying really hard to not be feminine, but here I was pregnant, and then I got pregnant again right away and had these two babies 15 months apart, and I really just saw the body as like, okay, hurry up and make this baby already so I can do the thing that's really important, and was mad at my body that it started to break down when I was pregnant with my second child, which was my daughter, and I really couldn't have disrespected her more and have treated her more poorly, like no nutritional support. I went to the doctor and I took prenatal vitamins, but like just from a very superficial level. And then, when the kids were born, it was kind of similar, like love them and also like, but then how do I do this thing of mothering, and who are these little beings, and what is all of this? So I would definitely say it was like slower for me for sure.
What came to my mind when you were saying that is a matter of what are our values. Us is about highlighting the value of life itself compared with, say, achievement. And this is something still very relevant for me and for all of us, because our culture is so focused on achievement. Can you make more money? Can you have more clothes? Can you be more of this or more of that, or strive or go somewhere? And I'm all for that. I'm a go-getter, and I love achieving and creating, and there's a real positive aspect to that. But if it is at the expense of the appreciation of the present moment, where we don't need to achieve anything, go anywhere, do anything, we know here and now, right now, we're enough, then it's a real tragedy. And the complexity of our culture is that corporations, capitalism, in many ways thrives off our feeling like we're not enough. And I speak about this in the book, where there's been studies done that prove, and it's well known in industry, that if you make a woman feel bad about herself, that she is more likely to buy things. She's more likely to buy products. Maybe she's more likely to need that fancy house and enslave herself with a huge mortgage, because, then she'll be good enough, or have all that makeup, or all those fancy things. And yeah, that's great for the company's profits, but what does it do for us, and what does it communicate to our bodies about their value? It shows them as just workhorses working to reach some value determined by someone outside of ourselves. And that's what I'm really against. I want every woman to know, here now, every human, every child, here and now, no matter what happens, we are enough. And that's a very powerful place to live our lives from.
It's really igniting something in me, Jena. I can feel the connection being made in my system. So for me, the body has always been this mechanism that was slower or weaker or more broken, or definitely this kind of sideshow. And even when people would tell me like, oh, you should take care of yourself, or you should eat healthy food, or you should. You know, I would get that on an intellectual level, but there was never like a spiritual connection. And as you're speaking about this enslavement was the word that actually came from me too, this enslavement of how we've been taught as women to, you know, it's really like, I feel it as programming. I think it's really kind of a sneaky piece of the patriarchal system where if, you know, we've been separated so much from our bodies as women that we become slaves to all of this distraction outside of ourselves. And so as you were talking, I was really getting moved, feeling this connection of like, this is not something I should do. This is my way out of my enslavement. This is my way to freedom. Embracing my body is like emancipating myself from anything that is not me. It's not a lessening. So in the past, I've held it as like, oh, this is some lessening of what I really am. I'm this big, giant galactic spirit fit in this tiny, non-functioning body. And really what I can feel is it's completely the opposite. It's like the more down and in I become, the more present, the more in love with and in relationship with I get with my body, the freer I am as a soul. You know, it actually feels like that's it's the point, right? That's really the point.
And the truth is we are all free. And it's the big conspiracy that we're not. And I gave the example of capitalism. If you don't think you're good enough, you're more likely to buy stuff. Another aspect of that is if you're ashamed of your sexuality, you are more likely to defer your own wisdom and look outside of yourself and serve someone else's agenda. This is the reason, from my understanding, that there's so much of a stigma around sexuality. Like, why should sexuality have so much shame and stigma around it? You know, we need it to create life. It's this delicious, free, innocent pleasure that anyone can have. You know, why the big deal? Why are so many religions and governments against it? So my theory is because when we have great sex, there we are with our partner, be it a man or a woman, and in that moment we are complete. We, there's a reason why people say, oh my God, when they have an orgasm. It's a deeply spiritual experience of completeness and wholeness and fulfillment. And in that moment, we don't need to go down to the mall. We don't need to make war. We don't need to please the Joneses. We just are. So if you can have someone feel ashamed about that deepest pleasure, that most powerful force that runs through us, then basically they're screwed. They're out of their power, and you can manipulate them in any way you want. So, we're getting good and political here, and this is really how I want women to think about their weight loss and their relationship with food. It's not a personal shortcoming. It's not your own failure or something wrong with you. No, it's part of a bigger system where we have been indoctrinated to doubt ourselves, hate ourselves, distrust our pleasure, turn away from what's natural, and hope that something outside of ourselves is going to save us. And I want to bring that wake-up call. It's not coming. Come back to your roots. Come back to your innocent pleasure, your erotic innocence, as I like to say. That's where the self-love, the weight loss, the peace with food, the ecstasy of aliveness, all of it is going to come from.
Well, it's interesting. Even as you're saying pleasure, I'm noticing the energetic attachments that we've made to when somebody even mentions the word pleasure. There's almost like an energetic tittering, that, oh, that's related to sex, which is like a whole stigmatized piece, which is so funny, right? It's funny that pleasure is anything other than, the forefront, or like, yes, pleasure, let's talk pleasure. Like, I can feel how there's even like shyness around even the word pleasure, and then trying to relegate it to certain to the bedroom or to, a singular act even within the bedroom. Like it's the smallest container we can give it has really been where we've placed that. And this is why I think you are so compelling to me, because as I've watched you, like you really do make pleasure of everything, of like sitting on a soft carpet, I would watch you noticing that and like touching it, or like the clothing that you have on, like you're more pleased by what you're wearing than anyone in the room, because it's not for anyone else. And like it really is every tiny small piece. And I want to just keep bringing that back, because I'm really getting this, on such a deeper level today, that this is that pleasure is this portal into not just like, oh, it would be a fun experience, but pleasure as in this is essence. Pleasure, this is the fullness of life right here. This is what we came to be, because, we can bliss out when we go back to spirit, but here we have this unique ability to have a body that can taste things and that can have an orgasm and that can, feel her skin and like all of those pieces. And so many of us are just missing every one of those opportunities.
You said something before that I disagree with, that there was a time when we had to survive and put our pleasure second, and now we're in the phase where we can embrace it. And I actually don't believe that. I certainly there's been hard times when we've had to survive, but if we look historically, we see that up to about 5,000 years ago, there were, and even today in indigenous cultures, there was this connection with the earth where, yes, even though we have the challenges of surviving weather and food supplies and all of that, there's this trust in the abundance of life and nature. Nature will provide. If we all band together, everybody's going to be fine. Everybody's going to be fed. Everybody's going to be loved. And anthropologists describe the Paleolithic cultures where, and there's a lot of conflict over this in terms of dogma, where there's some parties that say, oh, humans evolved with a dog eat dog culture. It's all about competition and survival of the fittest. Whereas others that I lean towards would say, no, it didn't work like that. When we were evolving, if we were against each other, we would perish. We had to band together to function and thrive. So it's my belief that for a long time, we've known how to thrive. We've known how to get along. We've known how to cooperate. In fact, that's the most unique trait, or the trait that distinguishes humans from all other animals, is our ability and the pleasure that we take in cooperating, which is interesting. So where I'm going with this is, I do believe that it's only when we get out of that cooperation mentality and we get into a mentality of some people deserve more than others, and a hierarchical notion, that we imagine that we need to fight to survive and that we forget pleasure. But if we open our eyes a bit wider, embrace the feminine lens of cooperation and collaboration, then we realize there's nothing to fight. We have everything we need. Let's dance and enjoy. Mm-hmm. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah. So I'd like to hear you say more about. So in the past, do you feel like like in the caveman culture, they were experiencing a lot of pleasure because they were collaborating? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Everything. Once upon a time, every possible pleasure was healthy. All right, you're a cave woman. Oh my gosh, you got some fruit, you got some honey, you got some loving, you got some sex, you got some cuddles or dancing or music. All good, all healthy. And over time, yes, there's been the invention of white sugar and there's been the invention of, let's say, computer games or TV or things that seem like a pleasure but have a negative effect. So I'll throw in a definition here: true pleasure versus counterfeit pleasure, where true pleasure is wholesome, it's nourishing, it makes you feel good now and in the future, it's sustainable, it allows you to have more of it, it doesn't take away. So sex can fall in that category, again, when it's really good, wholesome sex that you want to have and you're present, and so can eating good food, eating any food, eating a bowl of ice cream. If you're really present and you're enjoying every bite and you have just the right amount, great, that's a true pleasure. A counterfeit pleasure is when it feels good fleetingly, but afterwards we get a hangover, we get a headache, we have low energy, we feel like we weren't actually true to our bodies. That's where we need to be able to distinguish the difference and really appreciate the many, many simple pleasures that are available all the time, and not just lean on extreme pleasures like sugar or alcohol to give us that fix of feeling good. I don't know if that answers your question, but
it does. Well,
additional points.
It totally points to this quote that you mentioned in I think it's in the epilogue of your book, but it struck me, and I've been hearing it weaving through this whole conversation, which is all pleasure, harm it none, is in honor of the divine, right? And you talk in there about this is the directive to seek pleasure without harming yourself, your animal, or anyone else, which is what true pleasure is. And I think that's such a guide, because of our complex, convoluted relationship with pleasure, I think it's confusing for a lot of people about, I'm going to go quote celebrate, but celebrating usually means overeating or overdrinking or, those kinds of things. And I feel like we really, that's such a pure definition of pleasure and how to know whether you're there or not, and then what the whole point of it is.
Yeah, and here's the thing. If you are ashamed of pleasure, here's what happens with shame. Shame, basically, when it takes over, it's like a dark cloud that prevents us from being present with what's really going on. So let's say, I don't know, you call me, and it's the middle of the day, and I'm thinking, oh, I should be working, I can't answer the phone, I can't talk with a girlfriend, just the fun of it, but I'm talking with you anyway. Well, the shame will prevent me from really savoring the goodness that's available. And when that happens, we don't get what we need, and then we need to have more of it. So even at the end of the conversation, even though I had the opportunity to speak with a good friend, I won't really feel the nourishment of it because the shame is pushing it away. Mm-hmm. That is so often what happens. We're eating the cake, but we're ashamed of the pleasure, and so we don't actually get the satisfaction. What we need to do is to come back to the innocence of it, knowing that pleasure is good, pleasure is healthy, it's needed, it's a biological requirement, so that when we eat without shame, we really get the satisfaction, and when we're satisfied, then we're full, and we don't need to eat more. Mm-hmm. So essentially, shame corrupts our experience of pleasure, and then we need more to get our fill.
I totally get that. There was this whole wave of puritanical programming underneath all of that, of pleasure is something that happens after you die or in the afterlife or, after you've struggled and suffered through what's happening here. And it feels like it's such a holdover that really we could just start taking a look at and becoming aware of, and then just emancipating ourselves in a moment, right? I'm just going to fully enjoy this with no apology, with no leaking energy required, but just wow, this is good cake, And I can totally see how, I love that analogy or the example of talking to a good friend, because I totally would fall into that, of like, oh, I'm busy and I shouldn't take this call, but I'm going to take the call. But then I'm like, oh, gosh, we were on the phone for an hour and a half. That was probably too long, right? Instead of I had the best conversation ever. Even if we don't tell anyone, we're just even apologizing to ourselves or bleeding the energy out of something lest we have actually enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned the puritanical values, because it is interesting to remember that America, in large part, North America, was founded by religious zealots that essentially got kicked out of Europe because they were too extreme. They didn't want them there. And they came over here, and that's the foundation of our culture. So when you hear those voices in your head that say, oh, I shouldn't, pleasure's bad, you want to ask, where did those voices come from, and who were they benefiting? Mm-hmm. And you'll find it's not you. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to really establish what are the beliefs that are going to serve you.
Yes. Yes.
Because really, pleasure, you'll have pleasure in heaven when you're dead. Who's that benefiting? Mm-hmm. Let's be honest here. What comes to mind for you?
Well, it's benefiting all of the capitalists who need you to buy stuff because you're suffering, for sure.
There you go.
And it's benefiting the people who need to control you so that you stay enslaved and striving, for sure.
There you go.
Well, what do you get?
Same thing. It's somebody else.
Yeah.
Everybody else, anybody else, but not you. And this is where it's important. Yes, we're part of a bigger system, and none of us are islands. We're all interconnected, and each of us has the right to put our own dignity, our own happiness, our own values first, and trust that those, when fulfilled, will benefit the whole.
Yeah.
We have sacrifice on the pedestal, but I want to take it off. I don't believe in sacrifice. I don't believe in compromise. Compromise so many people say, oh, compromise is essential. I like to ideologically say, no, collaboration. Let's work together. Let's find a win-win. Let's bring our creativity. There's got to be a way where no one has to lose.
Mm-hmm. I love that, actually. And this is great because last week on the show we talked about lone wolf medicine and ending the reign of the lone wolf, which, would have us be an island unto ourselves. And also you and I are the same archetype. And so there's this interesting marriage of what I was talking about last week is our lone wolves also have lots of medicine for us, like so many gifts. And what yours is bringing is this idea of no apologies, of my needs come first, end of story, and, let's collaborate from that space, which I think is such a revolutionary paradigm for women who are generally taught to sacrifice first or compromise first, and then, if there's anything left, go ahead and play with that. And then, of course, there's never anything left. So I like it. I think it's I can see people saying it is controversial, which is, well, what if there isn't a win-win? Then what? Then what happens?
Obviously, it's a case-by-case situation, and it's really an approach. Like one of my favorite quotes is by Mama Jena, which is, pleasure is the highest form of responsibility. Okay, what the heck does that mean? What that means is in any situation, yes, you can suffer, you can look on the dark side, you can be in pain and anxiety. And I'll give an example recently. I went through a divorce and followed by a painful breakup. And okay, there's a time just to feel the pain and be in it. But at a certain point, to take responsibility means to decide, to choose to return to your pleasure. Okay, I'm single now. How am I going to have pleasure in that? Or, okay, I want to accomplish something with work, or I want to have great food in the kitchen, or anything I want to do. I want to be physical, and I want to grow my muscles and telling my body, how can I do it with pleasure? That is the highest act of responsibility in my belief.
Yeah. Because?
So, because it's easy to suffer. It takes no effort or no responsibility to stay in the suffering. You just go with the flow, read the newspapers, feel the tragedy left and right, believe what the culture tells you, you're not good enough, and let the rest be for misery. It takes no effort at all to be miserable, essentially. It takes digging in and saying, no, I will find that win-win. I don't know what it is. It could take all my imagination and creativity. Can take thinking out of the box. I don't have the win-win solution all in a package to give you. Mm-hmm. But I do believe with our human ingenuity that we can find a way to make anything pleasurable, which is how I've come to pleasurable weight loss.
Yeah.
Which I love because people are like, really? Is that possible? And to say pleasurable sex is like, okay, it's supposed to be pleasurable. But to say pleasurable weight loss or something I haven't come to yet, pleasurable parenting or pleasurable finances or pleasurable cooking or pleasurable clean the house. Any of these things is like, oh, really? It's pleasurable? How? All right,
totally.
Let's find out. How can it be? It's an opening. It's a question. It's a direction to move in.
Well, it's so beautiful because I was actually just speaking to some of the women that I'm working with today, and we were actually having this conversation around collaboration and like when, for example, when we're triggered, or when we're in our mess, then how do we do that in collaboration with each other? Like, do we, because I was promoting, I think radical self-responsibility, which is let's take some space. You work your stuff, I'll work my stuff, and then when we're as clear as we can get, we'll come back together and collaborate from a space of clarity. And the question arose, don't you think it's more feminine to be with? Don't you think it's more feminine to be with the suffering of the other woman and be with her through it? And I said, I feel like we've done that. I feel like we've been doing that for eons. Right? And we're really good at the suffering. So what feels good to me is to challenge this paradigm, exactly what you're saying. Like, let's actually reach for something higher. Let's reach for something that's a little outside of our wheelhouse. And, it is exactly what you're talking about, just in a different realm, but we're saying the same thing.
It's interesting that you say that because I think an important part of being a woman is not to over-identify with our masculine side, which I did for a long time. I had no respect for my feminine side, and ironically, it took me reading a book written for men, teaching men how to respect women, that caused me to respect my own feminine self. It's a funny story. Mm-hmm. But I think that can be taken too far where we don't then value our masculine side. Mm-hmm. I identify very much with my masculine side. I'm extremely feminine, but I'm also extremely rooted in the masculine. I believe we have, every man has his inner feminine, every woman has her inner masculine, and knowing that you have access to the full range is extremely empowering.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and my guiding principle seems to be untaming, right? So just as you said, it's not always one way or another, but it's like, what is the opposite of how you've been doing it? And then the evolutionary edge would be the opposite. So if you've been being really masculine, then, evolving into your feminine is good. And, if there's a particular area like over-identifying with suffering that you've been doing, then it will serve you to move into the other end of that spectrum, which is pleasure and freedom and responsibility, and that feels so juicy. So, I actually, one of the things that you said in that epilogue was having pleasure in life and having meaning in life are one and the same. That really pleasure is the point. It is the reason we're here. It's not some sideshow that, happens if you're lucky or in a moment, but like this really is the way to both express essence and be essence and fully embody your humanity, it seems.
I do believe that.
Mm-hmm.
It's years of research. What it comes down to is the things that make us feel good give our lives significance, give us meaning, give us purpose. And when we can face that without shame, without guilt, then we become a lot more focused and clear about what really matters, and the other things fall to the side.
Mm-hmm.
And how that plays out in a practical way, if you start your week knowing, okay, feeling good is important. I'm going to feel good here. I'm going to put attention to feeling good in my kitchen at breakfast, with what I wear, with the thoughts that are in my head as I walk the kids to school, and so on and so on and so on. Then at the end of the day, at the end of the week, you've created this tapestry of fulfillment, and you're full. Versus if you push those things to the side, the pleasure in the present moment gets pushed away, and you're future thinking, forward thinking all the time, then you get to the end of the week and you feel, or the end of the day, and you feel empty. Mm-hmm. And what do you turn to? You turn to food. You turn to alcohol. You turn to numbing devices or extreme devices to feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So that's the perfect setup for what I wanted to ask you next, which is how we begin to turn our pleasure muscles on. And I've been having this exact experience where, I'm here on the heels of a really successful launch in my business. I have lots of time. I have lots of resources, and it's almost like I've forgotten how to enjoy things. And so there's kind of a lot of wandering around and I want to eat healthy, but I'm not sure where I would start. And then, and I find myself coming to the end of a day and I'm like, did I do anything I loved? I had all day and I don't know, because I'm constantly censoring myself or, doing something that's less fun because that's what I've conditioned myself to do. So I would love to hear if you have any, first, some starting points for waking us up. And then I have a follow-up question to that.
Okay. A couple of things come to mind. First is the frame of what I call erotic innocence. I mentioned that a moment ago. What is erotic innocence? Well, the word erotic comes from the word eros, which means the pulse of life. It's about that effervescent aliveness that is in everything. Our erotic innocence is the drive inside our bodies towards that aliveness, that opening, that expansion, that expression. And what makes it innocent is that it's prior to shame or guilt. It comes from the body, which evolved before the mind, and before there was such a thing as, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's not in our religion, or that you don't have time for that. Before any of those voices came in, there was simply this moving towards what feels good. So it's lovely to take on that frame. What if you can tell your mind, shh, be quiet. Okay, you can have your shame, you can have your guilt, just turn down the volume, and let's turn up the volume on the erotic innocence. It's like a force of curiosity. It's your senses turned on high without the narrative of the mind saying what's good and what's not good. And when you do that, you can experience your world in a whole different way. You can walk out your door and notice, for me today it would be how the snow that fell yesterday is still catching on the top sides of the branches and creating these white stripes that are just fantastic, and they look like some creatures from a jungle. Africa. I don't know. My imagination is going wild. So there's the visual component of how can I let my visual sense be pleased. Okay, how can I let my sense of smell be pleased? So that might be a perfume or flowers in your room, or a favorite of mine is incense, and not the chemical kind, but the natural kind. With tastes, with touch, with texture, with sensuality, any of these realms, when you let your mind's judgments pause, you will find that there's so many things that your body is curious about. You can think of pleasure as that. Pleasure is follow your curiosity.
I love that. I love that. And
You
so many of us we don't even know how to do that anymore. Like, oh, I'm curious. Yes, I actually had a question about that, or I'm an inquiry about what it would be like to walk outside when it's super cold, or to touch the grass in the winter, to pick up a leaf.
Yeah, because there's a pleasure in the known things, like some things we just know, like a hot bath. Okay, that's good. It's proven pleasurable activity. But there's something about pleasure that loves the unknown, that loves the discovery. What is it I don't know yet that might be enjoyable? And follow that thread. Mm-hmm. Like with me for now, technology, Instagram. Okay, well, what is Instagram? It's a tool people use for marketing, and excellent. But what is it? It's a visual expression. It can have words in it, and what's possible there? What can I say? What can I capture? What can I express? That's one of my current edges of curiosity and pleasure research.
Well, that was my follow-up question. I was like, how do you push the edges of pleasure in your life? Given that you're so good at it, with sexuality or with your animal or, outside of food, like how are you pushing your own edges of pleasure?
What I realize is that pleasure is about becoming more sensitive. And one way to determine a true pleasure versus the counterfeit pleasure is the true pleasure makes us feel more sensitive to pleasure, and less of it goes further, versus having us feel deadened or dulled. So catching myself, if I am, I think a deadening pleasure that I can get into sometimes is Facebook, for example, and just scroll, and get in this trance, and is it really doing anything for me? Frankly, no. I think vocalizing it here, it's time to have a bit of a break from that, versus what is going to make me feel more. Right now, it's a meditation practice. I'm exploring mantras, Sanskrit mantras that calm the mind and get us in touch with this peace and inspiration inside. In terms of sexuality, there are whole schools for becoming more sensitive sexually. One of the tools for that is the jade egg that comes from the Taoist tradition, and that's something that's an edge for me right now, is to explore being more sensitive in my vulva, in my vagina, all of these muscles, toning them, learning how to move energy through my body with breath, with intention, with muscular action. Another would be music. I love music, and I was saying, obviously I love sex, but I don't have the ultimate love-making playlist. So that's something for me at the moment. An edge of my curiosity is learning more about music and the kind of music that creates optimum lovemaking. Because what I have found is that music that's too fast, it really detracts. music that can be too slow, it can put us to sleep. So what is that epic lovemaking music? Just practical little projects that are fun to explore.
I love that. I'm adding all of those to my list. So fun. That really is.
And
it's my mode for the year is pleasure and fun, and in regaining my erotic innocence and curiosity and pleasure. So good. Did you have one thing you wanted to add?
Well, what comes to mind is, one is when you have those things, they build upon each other. Like a playlist that you make for lovemaking, you can have perhaps for a lifetime, and you can share it with people, and it can be, they're assets that grow.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's important to remember when we're thinking, all pleasure, harm at none is in honor of the divine, is that we often have the feeling that if we're putting attention on our own pleasure, okay, maybe it's not harming someone, but the fact that we're not attending to their pleasure, first of all, is harming them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important to break and as a belief, and instead to see yourself as a role model. Okay, let's say you go out on the town with the girls because that pleases you, and you're not at home pleasing husband and kids in that moment. Are you taking away from their pleasure? You could see it like that. Or are you role modeling for them how we are the source of our own pleasure and encouraging them to be that for themselves? I would encourage you to embrace the latter.
Amen.
Amen,
because that's our emancipation. If we don't do it, then we just raise another generation of people who are enslaved and suffering and delaying their gratification.
Exactly, and who are, again, looking for someone to provide it for them rather than being the source of it themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and certainly in essence it is both and. It's all of that. There is no suffering or sacrificing. In essence, it's just fullness on every level. So this is in such resonance with that. Jena, I could speak to you all day, and I can't wait to come sit with you in your sensual, beautiful home that you've created. And I know that will happen really soon. And I'm sure that women will want to know, how can they play with you more? How can they continue to learn from you or walk closer on this path of pleasure?
Well, look, I'll say that my focus right now is helping women who feel that they're struggling with their weight, with their body image, and with their relationship with food. And obviously pleasure extends way beyond those things, but if you're caught up in the suffering in those ways, then it can really take away from your pleasure all around it, and certainly your power and your ability to feel free. Mm-hmm. So the thing I'm most excited to share is the new book I've just written, which is called Pleasurable Weight Loss: The Secrets of Feeling Great, Losing Weight, and Loving Your Life Today. And it's available far and wide. But to give a taste of it and a real experience of how it works, I've created a free program. It's called 7 Days of Pleasurable Weight Loss. And that includes mindsets, practices, recipes. It's quite a holistic program. And that's available for free at pleasurableweightloss.com. That would be the first step I would suggest to playing with me, as you put it, Judy.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I have to say, even if you aren't needing to lose weight, but there may be some places where you can repair your relationship with food. Like, I've not ever been someone who had a big issue with weight, but I certainly have lots of punishment and shame paradigms around food and many food sensitivities, and I got so much from reading your book, Jena, about eating for energy and bringing pleasure to the various parts of my meal, rather than feeling like, oh, I'm going to eat this and then I'm going to be sick, or I feel like I'm always fighting with food, or I'm I'm eating food and I enjoy it in the moment, and then there's this, tail of backlash. But really just I love how you speak to the energetics of actually enjoying the food, and I can feel like in my own system how so much of the reaction in my body is from closing to what I think is going to happen after the eating, and so then it kind of becomes this vicious cycle. So there's just many gems in here about how to relate to food as well as pleasure. So even if the weight is not the thing, I think this book actually is good for just about anyone.
Absolutely. What I want above all is for every woman to love herself and to love her body. It's so important. Loving your body is not a fabrication of the diet industry. We could think of it that way, like, oh yes, diets, they're just trying to make you think you need to be skinny to love yourself and love your body, and I don't endorse that. But the loving your body part, absolutely. I want every woman to go through her life and live her final breath feeling this authentic, I love you with her body. And pleasure is the gateway. Pleasure tells your body, I'm lovable, I'm good, I'm worthy. I was put on this life, on this earth for this purpose. And as you said, whether you need to lose weight or not, learning to love your body unconditionally and feel at peace with food, the fuel for our bodies, is what this book is all about.
Pleasure as fuel. I love it. Thank you so much, Jena, for being here. We will post the link. You can, let's say it one more time. Is it pleasurableweightloss.com?
Pleasurableweightloss.com.
Yep, and we'll post it all of the places in the tribe, and we'll send it to you in the email as well. So for now, we end our session with the magnificent. There's so many adjectives I can use to describe the deliciousness of this woman, but you've gotten a beautiful glimpse into it here. So until next time, sister, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Jody.
Bye.
We light a candle, our hearts awake. Illumination, for God' sake. A revelation, for God' sake. An inspiration, for God' sake. Illumination, for God' sake. For God' sake. For God' sake.